with a 85 question survey that's given out to states from the federal government, and we are asked that we keep about 62 of the questions the same, and we modify our survey to 99 questions. Wallingford took the 2013 version of the state survey and made just 2 modifications because of some concerns in town, and gave that to their grades 9 through 12 students in the fall of 2013, actually during Red Ribbon Week, actually. So some of the modifications in 2013 included looking at a more narrow timeline for prescription drug abuse, and something else that'll come to me in a couple minutes. I want to say it might have been related to one of the parenting questions or the family life questions. 2015, again, Wallingford decided it would be really beneficial to see if we've had any changes in behavior, especially because there were some hot topics that were driving some programs at the middle school and high school level, I believe. And we looked at the version of the survey. We really wanted to keep a lot of the questions the same so that we would be able to compare from one year to the next. So in the fall of 2015, the 2 high schools again surveyed the entire school population, with some students opting out and parents opting out their students too. And we modified it a lot more because we really wanted to get a picture of positive factors in the student's life and really look at the big picture, not just life in school, looking at school factors, but really some parental or family factors in the student's life, and see what's possibly protective. The students that are not engaging in risky behaviors, what do they have in common? And let's look at big picture, just not, are they getting A's and B's, but dig a little deeper. So we have 2 years worth of data, and in that time, I believe there was a program with driver's education that was looking at risky driving in our teenage drivers, because that's the #1 killer of our teens, and bringing in parents to one of the sessions to make them aware. Was it mandatory?
Yes.
So the parents came as one mandatory class, and they really learned about modeling behavior. If you're texting and driving, your daughter or son might be accepting that behavior as okay or not that bad. There was also a focus on 10th grade substance abuse prevention, and I believe that was done in the health classes. And Ken, was there one other topic that was, you met with coaches?
Coaches.
Yeah.
We also, from a district point of view, we had Prom Promise.
Yes.
That was led by our PTAC parents. We did a series of activities around that with a legal representation talking about hosting and those who hosted the most. So we did that 2 years in a row. And then a variety of different collaborative opportunities with the coalition and youth and social services.
So my interaction has been more from the data side in administering the survey. As far as the activities in the school district, I know Ken and Dr. Menzo and Craig could speak more to those, and the 2 principals too. So I'm here really to just take a glance at some of the topics we just talked about, and then we added in some of the parental factors. That was a big modification for the 2015 survey. So we thought our health director was interested in nutrition factors. We got that information from 2013, but we opted to not include a lot of the fruit and veggie questions in 2015. And frankly, the rates really don't change from year to year. Unfortunately, they're lower than where we want to see them, but that gave us a lot more room to modify the survey and include some factors at home. So I wanted to go through some of the topics, and I also added some, which is kind of next steps from what I understand, on looking at mental health issues in the population, in the teenage population.
Are all school districts required to do these surveys, or?
So there are 50 high schools. I'm in the midst of it right now, and I usually am not this nasally, but I'm fighting a virus because I think I'm just stressed out at work. But when the schools are selected, they're selected by the Centers for Disease Control, and it is voluntary. We offer the schools, I get a very tiny budget from the feds for this, and I try and give it right back to the schools. We give them $500 in the form of a American Express debit card. And so they don't have to do this, but we need at least 42 schools to do it so that we could release Connecticut-wide results.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to pass out the slides.
Just for clarification, if I may, the state assessment is only given to a sampling of students, correct? It's not given 9 through 12.
Correct. We select,
Yeah, that was our choice.
school-wide
with
is what was
Coalition
needed.
Youth and Social Services.
Yes, that was funded by and facilitated by many partners.
So we're unique in a good way.
No, and the data it provides, I don't need it.
Yeah,
Right.
so we'd be looking, I assume, we'd be looking, and you're correct, not here, but we'd be looking for another
Yes.
administration this fall,
Oh, yeah.
every 2 years.
Every 2 years,
cycle.
yeah.
I just wanted to know if you compared it to any, for the overall Connecticut.
Yeah, she does.
Which is, that's just what
Yeah.
I'm told here.
The only difference, and I'm learning this presentation because Celeste is a great teacher, is that the administration timeline is different. We
Correct.
give ours in the fall, and the state gives theirs in the spring.
Right, right.
And that's so we get a look at really a middle schooler before he's affected by high school.
Correct.
So we get a 9th grader coming in,
They're still an 8th grader,
yeah.
as our teachers.
But the consistency of keeping it fall over fall also gives us a barometer
Exactly.
Yes.
of apples to apples, because we know
Exactly.
fundamentally the changes that can happen in 6 months of puberty,
Exactly.
wherever they are in their life stage of that cycle, they're dramatically different between 8th grade and then graduating senior. So I think bravo to the, and just a shout out that the Board of Education continues to prioritize this, because that is, from a town perspective, a value. It's an asset to have that philosophy validated and supported from a funding and a resource standpoint, because it is a process that vets out parental authorization, and then kudos to our administration and our guidance department for facilitating acceptance of that, because there is a bit of a fair factor when we add questions in about parental life and life support around students, that there is a trickle-down factor of support that still has to be vetted year in, year out with a new crop of incoming 9th graders and such. So I do want to recognize the internal mechanisms that have to go into this. It's not as easy as just taking a piece of paper and letting it fly. I mean, this really does have a lot of parent support, and then the ripple effect of questions when students confront their own behaviors and see that mirror held up. The guidance counts, from a psychology standpoint, you do probably see a bit of an uptick in support needed.
Yes.
For maybe confronting something that has been buried or such. So I do want to give a tremendous round of applause for that bar that has been set internally to support this.
Well, and where credit needs to be given where credit is due is the fact that with the coalition support, I could make a recommendation to the superintendent until I'm blue in the face. But if you don't have community support and commitment, we wouldn't have a counseling coordinator, which has made a world of difference in helping our counselors do what they need to do rather than some of the administrative stuff, let them be with children, and we certainly wouldn't have a curriculum person for health and PE. That would have never happened if we didn't have people keep coming to our meetings and saying, we support this. Dr. Mental is not totally crazy, his staff's not totally crazy. But the board also had to step up and listen to that. So it's been, I truly, and I think we get commended as a town, and we have, and I know you've been part of those conversations, where people have been complimentary of the fact that a coalition has grown so quickly in such a short amount of time and has had so many levels of impact on the community. And I think that's a real value added, and that's a tribute to so many different levels. So.
It is. But Ken, can you stand up? I think this is being filmed just for those who may be watching this after. So again, Ken Welch, and again, we have this little flyer.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to.
I'm just throwing a little flyer. So Ken, can you give us, you've been a fantastic external stakeholder and advocate, of course, in the community and bringing that in. But you do have a flyer here. So if you just want to give us a quick soundbite while we give Celeste's voice a break and a wait for comrade and support.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. I want to make sure that there's clarity about our our survey. That's a Wallingford document, vetted by the feds and by the state, but it gets a little cloudy if you don't understand just how important that document is, and it is a living document, and it is a picture of our community. The state numbers are basically 42 classes of 30 kids each that are gathered together, and then those numbers are extrapolated across the state. Our numbers are not that. This is 1,900 kids in this town that responded, and we took those results, and that's what's in the study. So it's important to understand that these are real numbers, undeniable activities and behaviors and attitudes. So, with that said. Yeah, we've got a couple of upcoming events. One's called the Transitioning Teenager. When we went out into the community, the broader community, looking for support services for kids after high school, which is where we're seeing still a very large number of overdoses and overdose deaths. There was another one in Wallingford last night. There's just not support services for the kids after they leave high school. That support system and structure that the school and the family provides for them, whether they go to college or not, just isn't there in the same way. So we went down and talked to some Southern graduate students, and they put together a nice program, which we're doing on March 16th. Preferably, it's parents and kids that come, because there's messages for both there. But I just found out tonight that there's some tools that we already have in place that just need to be reinforced through the school system that already exist there, which would be helpful for parents. So I can tell you that really needs to be reinforced, because we did this because we weren't hearing that those tools existed. So, and then we've got some others, the Truth About Marijuana coming up on March 9th, and a number of other outreach programs. Check our website. So thanks.
Do you want to list your website just for the record?
It's cbwlfd.org or Facebook. Our Facebook's kind of a living thing too. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you. So,
Okay, you want to start with that?
I don't know.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think.
Let's
It's
start.
almost, it is.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
discuss.
discuss, yes, we'll discuss the data points, and then we can have a discussion about potential impact from the programs and the initiatives in town, so as I mentioned before, the number one pillar of students age or youth age 15 to 19 is motor vehicle accidents, and it's been motor vehicle accidents in Connecticut for a very long time. Even as we improved our seatbelt rates, we still have, I'm short, I gotta remember to do that. Even as we improve our seatbelt rates, we're still having this as the number one killer, because kids are distracted when they're driving, whether it's now, of course, cell phone usage, but too many friends in the car, etc. So the way I'm presenting the data today is really to imagine a classroom of 30 students, and it's an even mix of 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And we ask them this question, and really just to put a face almost to the number of kids that said yes to this behavior. In a classroom of 30, or this time it's 25 students, about 4% of students said that they never or rarely wore a seatbelt while they were a passenger in the car. So we know the drivers are wearing the seatbelts, but we have some that feel less importance in seatbelt usage as a passenger. So we have laws for front row drivers, front row passengers, but I don't believe there are very strong laws for back seat. So that's about 1 out of every 25 students. And Connecticut's rates were a little bit worse than Wallingford, so Wallingford is doing better with that behavior. We asked the students if they had been a passenger in a car in the past month where they knew the driver had had a drink of alcohol, or more than one drink. In a classroom of 30, 5 students said that they know they've been in a car where the driver had been drinking. So it doesn't necessarily mean it was a peer. It could have been a parent or an older relative or somebody else. However, we know that if students get in a car with a peer, and they knew that peer had been drinking alcohol, they themselves are at elevated risk for drinking and driving. Connecticut's rates were worse than Wallingford. We asked the students if they drive, if they have driven in the past 30 days, have you had a drink of alcohol and then got behind the wheel of the car? About 1 out of every 15 teenage drivers said that they had a drink of alcohol and then got behind the wheel. That's about the same rate as what we see in Connecticut overall.
Celeste, how does that compare to last year's? Are we seeing it worsening or are we seeing it getting better? And you've got the benefit of a few.
We're seeing it getting better. So in 2013, we saw 10% of drivers admitting to drinking and driving, teenage drivers, and it went down to 6.5% essentially. And when I compare Wallingford to the state, as Ken mentioned, the state has a number of, the state data is compiled by classrooms in 42 high schools that take this survey. We end up with about 2,500 students taking the survey. Because it's a survey and not a whole student population, when we release our results say in Connecticut it ranged between 8.5% to 12.5%. And that accounts for the fact that it was just a sample of students and not a full population. So if Wallingford's rate fell out of that range of the Connecticut rate, then I am confident in saying that Wallingford differs from Connecticut. We also saw an improvement in Wallingford with those that were passenger in a car where they knew the driver had been drinking. So 1 out of every 4 teenage drivers in Wallingford admits that they were talking on a cell phone, even on a hands-free device, which is not allowed at this age, in the past 30 days. They admit to that. And that's comparable to Connecticut rates. And we also asked them if they texted or checked email while driving. It was about the same, about 30%. And that's pretty much equivalent to the Connecticut rate. And that used to be much higher. It used to be about 1 out of every 2 drivers. And that's when they made a hands-free law, I believe, for this age. So again, we saw improvements, not as drastic as the drunk driving, but we did see a decline in the rates for cell phone usage while driving.
Isn't that also, I mean, it's a small decrease, but other communities, those numbers are still going up.
I'm not sure about in other communities what their rates are. I would think with those statewide laws that there might be decline, or at least no increases, I should say.
And the fines have substantially increased as well. And they've tightened the driving permitting laws, so that the phone cannot even be turned on at this point under permit. So that would affect our sophomores and juniors.
I was going to say another thing, in the schools, we are more focused on distracted driving. So this will be our 3rd year that we're hosting a distracted driving program for all of our juniors. And that has been very, very well received because in addition to the traditional presentation, what is very impressive is they bring interactive computer simulators, and every junior cycles through that. So they're asked to do different, travel on different roads, if you will. And then they're given a command to text or answer their email or do something, and then they see how quickly they lose control of the vehicle. So it's very, it's a rude awakening to them because it is so realistic. So that's one of the helpful things that I think also speaks to the decline, or the more positive behaviors, I should say.
So another topic of interest that we're focusing on tonight is alcohol use in this age group. Cigarette use, which has been beautifully on the decline over the past 15 years, and other illicit drugs. So we asked students in the past month whether they've had at least 1 drink of alcohol on one day. And in a classroom of 30, about 7 students say that they have had a drink of alcohol. In the full report, which I have some copies at the end of this presentation, you can see it's more so our seniors rather than our freshmen. And that's seen in the state data set, even though they're at the end of their senior year, at the end of their freshman year. We see that even stronger probably with the Wallingford data, because these are freshmen for 8 weeks. That's how freshman-y they are. So we asked the students, essentially, did you binge drink in the past month? Did you have 5 drinks of alcohol in a row in a short period of time, at least once in the past 30 days? And in a classroom of 30, about 3 or 4 students said that they did. This is equivalent to what we see in our Connecticut data. Wallingford was better as far as lower rates of alcohol use compared to state data, but binge drinking was about the same as the state data. It's a common behavior. We believe a lot of times when the teenager has the opportunity to drink, they're going to drink as much as they possibly can in that one sitting. We saw some pretty good improvements, especially with the any drink of alcohol in the past month, and we saw a decrease in binge drinking also.
One of the things I think might also contribute is our health curriculum, which is taken by all of our 10th graders. In the last couple of years, we've invested in what's called beer goggles. So they're typical safety goggles that you would see in a science room, but the lenses are such that it distorts your vision. So they're in different increments that are aligned with various blood alcohol contents for alcohol, and then the students have to perform typical task, and they see that they just don't have that ability. So that's another way of getting them to really understand the numbers because they've experienced it in a safe way.
Going to pull off some of the data for our seniors. For binge drinking or just alcohol?
Just alcohol. We specifically targeted 10th graders because that's where we saw the greatest increase. So there was an interesting relationship between the seniors of 2013 and 2015 where the whole community stepped in and did some work with that cohort. There was a significant drop.
The rate of alcohol use, current alcohol use, meaning in the past month for our 12th graders was 1 out of 3 had a drink of alcohol in the past month.
And it was 44%.
It was higher in 2013.
It's almost 1 out of 2.
And the full report actually has results for Lyman Hall and individual results for Lyman Hall and Sheehan. Alternative school members were included in the survey, but I didn't break out their data because there were so few and then it's a confidentiality issue. And this report has the 2013 data point for comparison and then the Connecticut data point for comparison. I keep it here so you pay attention to me and aren't leafing through this one. But it is online on the Coalition for a Better Wellington website.
And also on our website.
And the district.
Yeah.
We actually asked about attitudes on alcohol use, and we saw some really positive changes. So we asked the students on a 5-point scale, how strongly do you agree or disagree with somebody just like you drinking on a daily basis? And from 2013 to 15, more students disagree with that. And also from 2013 to 15, more students recognize the risk of binge drinking. So even if they're not engaging in this behavior, that's fantastic to see more of them recognizing the risk of the behavior. So cigarette smoking is quite low in Wallingford. About 2 students in a classroom of 30 said that they had at least 1 cigarette in the past month. That's better than the state average, which is also quite low, but we're about 9%. And it even declined from 2013 to 15. We then asked the student, in the past, or ever in your life, have you ever tried marijuana? So in a classroom of 30, about 9 students have ever tried marijuana. Connecticut rates were a little higher. And then have you used marijuana in the past month. And Wallingford is just at that threshold of being equivalent to the Connecticut data. It's on the low side, but it's just at that threshold. So in a classroom of 30, about 5 students are considered current marijuana users. And here you can see no improvements from 2013 to 15. Thoughts?
Where do they get this? I mean, I saw where are they purchasing this stuff? Is it school? Is it home? I mean.
We have that slide.
All of we unfortunately,
It's
all
everywhere.
up.
It
all
is,
up.
it's all there.
It is all above.
This is the one category we moved didn't affect the change, which is why it's become a focus.
Well, part of the issue is that you're fighting a battle of a nation that deems it appropriate, and that's all the kids need to hear in order to make it more acceptable amongst the community. So,
It means we gotta work harder.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of where, and with the cigarette data, some of the issues is that they're not smoking normal cigarettes as much, but the e-cigarette use has
Skyrocketed.
risen drastically,
Yes.
and they truly believe that that's not the same as smoking when it is. So if you talk to a student, they don't understand why they're getting in trouble because it's not a cigarette. So that's the issue that we're battling now.
Right.
And the marketing of that has not, like, when you look on TV, they'll have a lot of the commercials with you if you smoke, and they have the person going to the counter and giving a part of their body because they've smoked, but they don't have the e-cigarettes. There's that disconnect there.
And that would be, you talked about how you modify the surveys, over the years. That might be something good to add.
Yeah, I
in terms
mean,
of vaping.
I think great idea with the vaping, and yeah.
We don't have a strong presence on this survey with tobacco or vaping because there's another component of the Connecticut School Health Survey that deals only with tobacco and vaping. So I think that's what kind of distracted from the fact that it wasn't on the Connecticut survey and didn't have a strong presence on the Wallingford survey, but that's certainly something to add.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, our Board of Ed policies
Oh.
absolutely explicitly
Oh, yeah, it's in there.
train them, right? I mean, this is not a surprise.
No,
for
it's
them.
not.
So.
No, but we even have
Enforce it.
parents that come to games and don't see the difference between smoking and vaping.
Absolutely, yeah, you're always at events. I mean, you're awesome. I mean, so you know what
They're
you
like,
see.
well, I'm not smoking
You
a
see it
cigarette,
here,
but
you carry
vaping
you-
is just.
I mean, everybody, I mean, it just, there's that disconnect still.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't gotten into the cultural understanding.
Our total focus is on the health issues that have to do with smoking and marijuana. We're not dealing with the economic issues, we're not dealing with political issues at all. We're keeping it in the medical realm. So all of this, the information that we're providing has to do with the realities of what's happening to your body. So if you see anything that we put out there that has to do with this issue, there's a number of things. We're staying in that health arena.
Okay, so we asked the students in the past, or ever in their life, if they've ever abused an over-the-counter drug to get high. About 1 out of 20 students said yes.
So, I'm sorry, just to clarify, Celeste, what does that mean? Is this cough medicine? Is this prescription drug?
Not prescription.
Not prescription. So
Strictly
it's-
over-the-counter.
So this is cough medicine, which I still don't understand.
Sudafed.
Sudafed,
or-
that's what they're
Right.
doing something with.
Yep. Sleeping pills, caffeine pills. We asked the students if they've ever abused a prescription drug, and in the question, we give the following examples: OxyContin, Percocet, Vicodin, Adderall, codeine, Ritalin, or Xanax. So not necessarily an opioid. If they did not have a prescription for that drug, and they did it to get high, ever in their life, and again, 1 out of 20 students said yes. We asked the students in the past year, have you abused a prescription drug? It's about a little bit less, 1 out of 25 students.
And we're pretty low compared to the state average for that.
That is lower than state average. State average is closer to 10%, and it used to be higher. So here are the changes. We saw the prescription drug lifetime use with the least drop, but we saw a drastic drop with the over-the-counter drug abuse, and a drop, not that strong of a drop with the prescription drug in the past year. I think hovered around 4 to 4.5% for the prescription drug recently.
And I think part of the drop in the over-the-counter is that they started to monitor the number of packages that students could buy, and so they really limited their availability to get it.
This data, I really, really appreciate this view of it, because I think it's just so clear. But this data, I want to make sure that we hold on to having a conversation more about this, especially many of our students who have access to these prescription drugs were aware of it because of programs that they might be involved in, be it a label of special ed or 504. And maybe there's some programming we could offer those parents, when they come to their annual meeting. Even if it's just as simple as initially as a pamphlet, just be mindful of locking your child's drugs, counting out the medication, doing something like that, just from a very simple one-sheeter, just that they have to, maybe we include it as they sign off that they got that. Like we have different things, they have to sign off on their procedural safeguards for a special ed parent. Make sure that they sign off on that we can make it available in Spanish and English, but very simple. I'm just thinking, because that one is something that I think it's in my heart, I want to believe that it's parents just not knowing enough to do those simple things like counting the number of pills or rationing it out over, and it might not be just that simple, but and I'm sure it's not on many levels, but I just, even if we started off something basic like that, so we knew that we were doing that, and then in high school, a lot of students attend their own 504 meetings, and obviously their PPTs. So if the student signs off, on receiving that material, I'm just, sorry, I don't mean to jump to solutions, but that's one that I think we could, when I look at this data and not seeing that decline as significantly as it should be, I think we could make headway in that from a procedural standpoint, definitely.
I think that's brilliant, because I think with the Wallingford Health Initiative, perhaps there's a town-wide, Eloise Hazelwood could consider a community-wide education event, because I think it's not just parents, I think grandparents. You think of every aunt and uncle, grandparent with locking cupboards and locking prescription drawers, kids who are seeking it are going to find it in alternatives you're not even going to dream of. And I think of my own cabinet, I don't even look to.
And the medication that hasn't been used in years. I
Right.
don't know if Wallingford has done that, where the police department hasn't
Yeah,
done
we do.
that
We're very
yet. That's
fortunate.
huge.
We've done that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So it might be something in conjunction
No, that's
with,
huge.
with a community
Yeah.
initiative that
Yeah.
kind of, I think, there's a broader opportunity, I think, there. I think it's brilliant for our own parents, but the network
We could
is.
bring it up at the meeting.
Yeah.
Well, we now have 3 different avenues for disposal. We're talking, the 2 things that we're pushing are, like you said, oftentimes, I think people just don't take the time to think about what they're doing.
Exactly.
And if you mention it, and if everybody's mentioning it, it's a reminder that there's a kid watching. And so that's one thing. And the other thing is the Xanax, or like aspirin. I mean, people think that they can use them freely, and you can't. And the kids are using them, and right now, that's their drug of choice for the mix of concoctions that they're using, because they know they're gonna get something from it, and the parents are using it way too freely for everything.
You mentioned a community event, April 4th, we're going to have our Wallingford Health and Fitness Fair at Sheehan High School, and a lot of the Healthy Wallingford 2020 partnerships are going to be there. So Ken will be represented there, and Youth and Social Services will be represented there, and Parks and Rec, and all of these topics. There'll be information for all of this, for students, for parents, community members. It's free to attend, and it'll be a nice event. So April 4th.
Maybe we could, just, again, piggybacking off of some of this stuff, if we go back through this as the wellness committee for the district, as well as with the Wallingford Health Improvement Plan Committee, is looking at the key points that we wanted to see growth in, and then maybe on I know we usually try to give out some type of map of who's there as vendors.
Yeah.
If we could color code them, that if you're interested in, this topic, these are where these vendors are, this is where this person is. So we kind of guide people, because they might know their child better than we do, and they might know that there's a need to discuss that, or maybe they don't, but the thing is that, you know, at least if we could kind of guide them to those places that, you know, the must-see places, and maybe even work off of it where we, you know, sometimes when you go to conferences and you go to the vendor booths, they want you to go, so you have to sign off on it, and then there's a raffle. So if we could build that in where they have to go to those top 5 points that we're trying to make and drive home, and that if they sign off on it, they could submit it for something.
Yeah, I've seen that done in the form of like a bingo card.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they have to go to the
A
mandatory
stamp or whatever,
programs,
yeah.
and then- right.
But I think we probably, I think that based on this data, if we're gonna, and I know, Tony, you're working really hard on this event with a lot of community resources, if we guide people to have to go to those, and there's something that they are able to take away.
And even well before that, as soon as these results came out, we looked at our wellness committee strategic plan, and we based our objectives and our goals off of these results, and we used this really to determine what we're trying to focus on throughout the year, and we'll continue to do that throughout next year too.
That's the advantage Wallingford has over many communities, that you have your own data. So it's really something to see, you know,
It
in
makes
moving
people
and driving things.
And invested in it.
Right.
Wallingford was called out by Bonnie Edmondson, who was the consultant at the Connecticut State Department of Education. She's a health consultant, and she called out Wallingford during a coordinators meeting, saying they have a great model of wellness because they have this data, and quite a few districts will do this assessment once and, oh, wonderful, and see you later. And we're now starting to build some longitudinal data with this that we can compare and really pinpoint if our strategies are effective in helping reduce some of these risky behaviors. So this is definitely something to continue, and it's impressive.
We also have, Tony shared with me today, and we want to integrate this at some point, some school districts in other parts of the country that have seen some academic improvement as well as social and emotional improvement by increasing and having daily physical education activity. So we really, really want to look at that, and it obviously has a lot of implications, but at least at the high school level, really activating fully functional fitness centers that can be accessed at any time for students. So the data that he shared with me was really mind-boggling, and very different school districts in terms of high affluence as well as low affluence, and we're kind of in the middle. That'll be something that we want to investigate, and with his experience and his background. So. I listened.
Thank you.
There's just one point I need to make. You made a point that you want to offer guidance to the parents of rationing out pills to their children who actually have a prescription for that certain medication. This is students that don't have a prescription.
Exactly.
So really this is a more narrow focus, and this is more concerning because they're able to obtain it. It's not their prescription. So the rates might be a tiny bit higher if you asked it, even if it was your own prescription, did you abuse it? So this is students that are getting their hands on it, and it really is marketing it to grandparents, aunts, and uncles.
Exactly, that was what Christine was saying,
Right.
which is great.
Is this, again, I don't know if you call this out, are they purchasing this like they do a pot deal? Or, I mean, or is this?
We don't
they're
ask if they
stealing-
purchased.
Okay, so they could be just.
That's
stealing
coming
from
up on
pot.
this year's survey, though.
Okay, I mean, I just,
This year's survey, the statewide survey, is asking more narrow. It's asking only opioid abuse, not Adderall or any non-opioid. And the following question is, how did you obtain that drug?
That's an important factor.
the channels are growing.
Okay, our next few topics, our slides are going to be on some mental health indicators. We asked students in the past year, did you have a 2-week period or more where you felt so sad or hopeless that it affected the way you got through your day? And in a classroom of 30, about 8 students said yes. So that's almost like a depressive episode, maybe not anything clinical or diagnosable, but still of concern, and mostly girls. And we have in the past seen in the statewide data an increase in some mental health risky concerns with juniors that we know is a very stressful year. Remember, we at the state asked this primarily in April and May, and that's not a good time for a high school junior, so.
No.
We asked the students only if they said that they had felt sad or hopeless, not necessarily for a 2-week period, but when you feel sad or hopeless or anxious or angry, who do you most likely talk to? Who would you most likely talk to? So they're primarily going to their friends, their peers. 22.5% or so in Wallingford are going to their parents or an adult relative. 4.5% are going to a sibling. 3% are going to an adult at school, like a teacher's counselor or a nurse. 2% are going to another adult. And I saved this for last because we can interpret this 2 different ways. 1 out of 5 said, I'm not sure who I would go to. So we know they're feeling sad or hopeless or anxious or angry. We're asking them, who do you go to? Are they telling us, I'm not sure, because they have many people to go to turn to, or because they have nobody to go to turn to? We don't know.
Yeah, we have to figure out how to
Question.
look at that question and ask it.
Right. Maybe add, we have 8 spots for an answer option.
Did you say none?
Well, I think not sure, this is just my personal opinion, is going to be more towards they don't have someone to go to. Because your initial instinct would be that first person that you normally go to. So they wouldn't answer not sure if they could say yes to any of the others. I mean, but again, that's just my opinion.
I would guess if there was in their mind a tie
Right. they
between a
would-
friend and a parent, that they would kind of pull on the past weeks of events and say,
And,
yeah, you know, my mom's my
Right.
rock, I'm the big parent. That's what I hope my kids say. But it's, that question really can be interpreted in 2 different ways, and that's the problem with survey methodology. You know, you can't pull back the student and say, tell me more. What did you mean? Okay, so this is what it would look like in a classroom. So the darkest on the side here are going to their friends. The lighter blue are not sure. The top sibling, adult at school, another adult, and parent. So that's the mix. And remember, these are students that say, I have felt that way. This is not including students that don't go to someone because they don't feel that way. We took them out of the data.
I notice if you go back to that, what's the largest area that students are going to help from? Their friends. And Ken had to step out, but he's really clued in on that, and the research that he's shared with me. If we can develop programs where students are helping each other, that's going to be one of the most effective ways to combat this, because that's where they're going. And so how can we empower the students to really help each other and recognize this in each other? And
Another
that's what we
question
want
might
to
be
develop.
too is how many of those friends reach out to somebody at the school to get their friends help? Because
Yeah.
I've been at the high school where I've seen that happen, so
Yeah,
that's
so
another
if
question.
a friend comes to you seeking advice because they're
What do you do?
feeling sad or hopeless, who have you gone to with that information? No
I wanna know
one,
that.
guidance, a parent,
Parent,
another
teacher,
friend.
an administrator, I would want to know that.
Well, even consider the sources though. You have the anonymous, you
You're
know,
right.
you have alternative channels that the district
right.
makes from an anonymity standpoint
right.
that the students can use. Of course, telephone, but they don't use that.
Yeah.
Maybe they do, you know, so
Yeah.
I think
I
validating
would
some of
wanna
those
see
internal
some of that.
instruments as a marketing, you know, reinforcing
Mhm.
those students. But I think there's other pieces that you can pull out.
I would
in terms
wanna
of your
know.
Support system.
The other piece of data that we recently collected, and we have it now collated in a format that we're going to share with the Wellness Committee, is we did do a life fatigue survey of students, parents, and staff. And the common thread across all 3 constituent groups was that stress was caused, because we asked students what stresses you out, basically, to put it in their terms. And it was, obviously it was balancing for them, because balance was across all 3 groups. For them, the whole idea of the social aspects of school and the academic aspects. And then also the feeling that they actually had accomplished something with success. And again, that was in all three groups too. Parents were saying that they felt the same way, that they wanted to try to help their child, but they didn't know if they were meeting success. Teachers and administrators, there's just so many new things that you don't know if you're doing it right. With kids, the same thing. So it was really interesting, but there were four data points really that crossed all three groups that we want to now try to brainstorm, okay, well, how do we look at this deeper? What do we put in place to try to resolve some of this, or at least try to offer some support?
So this question asks, who would you most likely talk to? We had a question several years back on the state survey because we knew research showed having supportive adults in your life is a significant protective factor. So we did have a different question that said, is there an adult in your life that you could turn to when needed? So these that answered in the greenish olive color said, I would most likely go to my parents. Those that answered friend doesn't necessarily mean they can't go to their parents, just they choose to go to their friends. So really enhancing or empowering or educating peers to know how to seek help for their friends, and then also improving relationships with adults so that it doesn't have to be a parent, but even having any adult to turn to is quite protective.
And it's also highly dependent on what exactly the problem is.
You're right.
I mean,
No, you're right.
if there's an academic problem, they're more likely to maybe talk to their parents. If there's a girlfriend or boyfriend or
Right. No,
relationship
that's right.
problem, they're gonna.
They're not gonna go to you.
They may
Sorry.
They might go to me,
Sure,
but they're
sorry.
more definitely gonna go to their.
Knowing your boys, no. Your husband's got a better shot.
Part of the inherent risk in relying on your friends is that they often run with similar kids. So what you see now are a lot of suicide websites that have kids entering into them that are all considering suicide, and it's not therapeutic.
No,
it's
it's
more
not
promotional. So the risk is forcing them to go to someone that doesn't have the ability to actually help them through it, but kind of reinforces the negative behavior. So one of the scary things about relying on kids to help kids is they don't have the skills necessary, and they often do run with kids that have similar thought processes. So it's a real danger, and one of the online problems we have, I think it was last year, we actually stopped a suicide attempt in Ohio because a student was on one of those websites where they basically talk kids through the methods of doing it. And one concerned student came to us, we called the school in Ohio, and they were able to intervene. But it's not always a good thing. I think more often than not, it's having a negative impact. Currently, not to say we couldn't educate them and make it better, but negatively it has a very negative impact currently.
So the same pocket of students, I have felt this way. We ask them, how often do you get the help you need? And only 1 out of 3 said that they actually get the help they need. And that has gotten worse statewide also in the past about 5 years.
And I think that correlates again with the reliance upon peers as opposed to parents, professionals, and school officials.
So it's really educating them or improving their help-seeking behavior. Going on social media is a very phony support.
Yes.
So really, the face-to-face help-seeking, real, true, sincere help-seeking.
I know that the school council went with the health classes and kind of teamed up with a couple of Tony's teachers to talk about it's not bad to get help. Come down to the school council office. You don't have to see me. You can see the school psychologist, school social worker, what's kept there. Because when we saw these numbers, we were very concerned. And I know not just the state, but all over, the rise on mental illness and depression is very, very scary.
I'm assuming we're seeing a correlation in guidance counseling. Are we seeing correlation in cases that you're seeing getting more intent, or they're intensifying in
I think
complexity,
that,
or?
well, I think there's more kids coming down than probably there has been that are seeking help out. for those issues. Or teachers coming down and saying, I'm really concerned, I've seen a student who lately has been withdrawn, and we want to encourage teachers to do that as well. We had QPR training for all of our entire staff last year that Tony's going to talk about, that we're going to offer to parents, that these are the signs that you should be looking for in those students and what the proper protocol will be. But it's sad, actually. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but
We asked the students if in the past year they seriously considered attempting suicide, and in a classroom of 30, about 4 students said yes.
Is that increasing in Wallingford?
it was 13.8 the year before, and then we're down to 13.1.
Okay,
I mean,
Essentially the same.
it's not the same. We did notice though about behaviors about hurting themselves, that had decreased. Self-harm from 13 to 15, but I think parents and students are now speaking a little bit more freely about that. I think when it comes to suicide and killing yourself, it's still a hard conversation. I went through a training last year, and they want us to use, when I was first trained, they said, oh, do you want to harm yourself? Now in this training I went to that I spent the entire day, do you want to kill yourself? Before it was like, do you want to harm yourself? So I think becoming more comfortable and having those very difficult conversations like we used to have about self-harm, and that had dropped significantly in the district about self-harm, because I think people are more freely and comfortable to talk about it. I think killing yourself is a very difficult subject to talk about. I'm sorry I went to interrupt us, but
That's okay. Discussion is good. About 2 students in a classroom of 30 actually attempted and survived suicide. We have really alarming hospitalization and emergency room data. We had some people doubt, so the rates for the statewide is higher than this, and they doubted, like, really? I mean, aren't they flooding the hospitals? We said, yes, they are. Or they're not getting to the hospital, depending on the method that they used. If they swallowed a bunch of pills and then induced some vomiting, they didn't tell mom and dad, and they stayed in their room, and they never told anybody. Or, you know, it was after the fact and they felt fine and didn't go to the hospital. So the hospital data confirms that the suicide attempts really are this high. They're probably higher because there's some that don't make it to the hospital. So let's look at the family structure and influences and support that our students are reporting. In 2005, when I first took this on, we invited folks from community organizations, some state agencies that had gaps in data to drive their programs. And we said, what do you wish you could have as far as data? And Department of Children and Families was really interested in looking at father engagement, but really parental engagement. And we added a few questions about life at home. And that just expanded throughout the past 12 years. And when we got our data back, we looked at a lot of the not so good things the students were doing. We really focused on that. And Christine, earlier you said, you know, a student taking a mirror. And part of that mirror is actually acknowledging the fact that not everybody is drinking. Not everybody is smoking pot. And we focus on the rate that they are doing it, but really validating that they're not alone when they're not engaging in this behavior. So we looked at what do these students have in common that are not engaging in these risky behaviors. And the majority of them had A's and B's. The majority of them had plans after school. So there were a lot of academic factors, really validating the fact we know that healthy students are better learners and successful after school. But the #1 predictor of the students that didn't engage in these risky behaviors were those that answered the strongest to life at home, the connectedness to their family. So we asked students, in the past week, was there at least 3 days where you had a meal with your family? And 7 out of 10 said yes. That's higher than our state average. I think a little higher than our state average. And that's tough for our seniors that might have a job in sports and whatnot. So it was a little less of our seniors, but that's kind of expected. We asked the students, do you agree or disagree that your family loves you and gives you help and support when you need it? And in Wallingford, about 8 or 9 students out of 10 said yes. And this was our strongest predictor in 1 year, and then it turned to the love and support. When you're not home, your parents ask you, where are you going? Who are you going to be with? So my manager at the time had 3 teenagers, and she said, yes, validation for being the nagging mom. We asked the student if they agree or disagree that their family or adults in your family have clear rules and consequences for their behavior. And only about 8, not only, that's good, 8 out of 10 said that there were clear rules and consequences. We asked if they've ever had the sex talk, or at least what's expected when it comes to sex. And about 5 out of those 10 students have ever talked to their parents about sex, or at least expectations, even if it says, you know, don't, or if they say, please just use a condom. So half of them have not had that discussion.
We have on the PTAC topic for next year. How to help parents have the sex talk.
I think we have our guest speakers lined up.
Yeah.
It's a serious
seriously,
topic.
That's 50%.
That's
I'm not trying to be funny, but I think that opens up conversation with the child on many levels. So
It's a critical need for, how does this vary by age? Freshmen versus seniors, least amount at the freshman level, more at the senior level? And I hate to make it big to the debate. I'm just curious if there's a wide variance based on the life stages. You know,
And I think that question itself is very telling. I mean, I'm not making fun of it, that's a very telling question, because when do you have that? It's not the same for every student.
True. 8th grade.
Maybe.
It's
I have a very young 8th grader.
middle school.
I have, you know,
I think, you know, in this day and age, again, but you know, the startling fact of puberty starting earlier for these kids overall, in general society, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the medical data showing puberty onset is starting earlier and earlier. I just think there's a reality concept of whether, you know, it's 0 to 100, but you know, I think it's a great parent conversation for PTAC to consider gently.
Well, I think there's all levels
As long as
too.
the parents
because
want to run it, we're fine with it.
We do. There is an elementary.
I have my wife.
Right? What is that, 5th grade? The elementary age talk?
AIDS education is required by law, pre-K through 12, and what it sounds like at the elementary level is very, very different, and it's very developmentally appropriate, and much like sexual education, that's a required thing that we have to have in our health curriculum. And there are parents that understandably are concerned and say, wait, that's my right. I want to have that conversation with my son or daughter. And absolutely, there's waivers for parents that want to pull their child from that kind of instruction. And that's 100% understandable and okay. But it's still not happening. The conversation is not happening even with that. And so we need to either educate the parents better. Okay, if you don't want us having this conversation, please, you need to have it. Here's some techniques to make it a little less uncomfortable to have.
But I think that the AIDS education, parents, and at least parents with multiple children, know what to expect at what level.
Mhm.
Like they know because they've been through it. It's a more difficult, when do you have the talk, how much of a talk do you have as you have your first one going through?
But
Do you know
don't
what
you
I'm
get the
saying?
forms in 7th and 8th grade? I
Yeah.
remember signing those
Yes.
for
Yeah.
my daughter.
Yep.
You know, they're gonna do this talk this grade, the
And
next
the
year.
and the
they
health
do
teachers are
separate. They all
very-
know, the boys go here, the girls
And
go
the health
here.
teachers are
Yes.
very, very
Yes.
What are
open,
they
please
talking
come
about?
contact
Yes.
us and get to know our curriculum better so you're comfortable with what we're saying. And what ends up happening more often than not, when a parent does take that step and goes to the student's or their child's teacher, they say, oh, wow, okay, that's being done very, very appropriately and in a manner I'm really okay with. So more communication.
Exactly.
Maybe the early fall, when our incoming 9th graders are coming in, because that starts pretty dramatically. I mean, that's a chapter, I think, in the health curriculum in freshman year?
Well, no,
Isn't there?
health is
Grade
all
sophomore year, that's right,
year.
sophomore year when it comes in.
But don't they do that talk in 8th grade?
Yes.
They do 8th grade and then sophomore year.
The thing that I think the difference is that it's not about the talk itself. It's about what happens because that conversation occurs between a parent and child. It's not about the content of the conversation. It's that there was actually a conversation about this, a deep topic that's personal to you as a growing adolescent. And then that opens up the conversations for the other opportunities, be it drugs, be it feeling depressed. So, you know, it's breaking through that first initial step of that difficult conversation with the child, that, and if it goes well or if it's awkward and you admit it's awkward and you have that conversation with the child and then get past it, the likelihood, and I don't have any statistics, you know, to draw from, but I'm assuming that if there's difficult conversation, which this could be, happens, be it successfully initially or not, or, you know, whatever it may be, there's more likelihood that the child is going to be willing to go back to the parent for other conversations, be it about sex or drugs or whatever it may be. So I think it's really not so much that we have, you know, I joke and say how to teach parents how to sex talk, but it's really about how to have those difficult conversations with your students, of which one topic might be sex.
Or it gets them interested. If you say something and they're like, whatever, and then they go back and they're, you know, they look it up and they do some research,
Yeah.
because they can. That's all they do. All they do
Google
is
it.
look up stuff and ask about it. And oh my God, my mom talks about that, or my dad. You know, is that really true? Oh my God, it is really. You know.
And we decided car conversations go very well because they don't have to have eye contact with you.
Exactly. Those are the best.
As long as you're driving and they're not driving.
And you got them trapped,
Huh?
so they can't go
They're
anywhere.
trapped.
The thing that I think is intriguing about this question, because it ties to another emerging issue that, and it's not even emerging, it's been with us now for several years, is the whole sexting and the whole use of devices in a sexual manner. And I think that conversation, we know, is not happening even 50% of the time in households, probably right now. And so, because we're the beneficiary, so to speak, of having to resolve those issues. And the frequency is high across the whole state, if not country. So again, I think that the PTAC conversation might be, you know, the whole conversation might just be how to bring up difficult topics with your child. And these are some of them. If you'd like more information, you could contact your health teacher.
Be surprised, the direction that our health curriculum is going is away from specific content and more towards ensuring kids know how to find and access correct information, and ensuring that kids know how to communicate properly. So it's less specific topics and more, can they advocate for their own health? Do they know where to go and to find valid information? Can they communicate properly? So that's where the health curriculum is going, and we've already started to dive into standards and indicators that really focus on that instead of these other content.
I think we have a very different child than we had 10 years ago. So our level of expectation of privacy, I would say, is a 10. When we were growing up, we were very private individuals. We've had students in our office that have photos that are inappropriate out there, and they don't care. They don't care that we know. They're very apologetic sometimes and upset that it's caused a problem, but they don't have an issue with the photo being out there. So it's really their perception of what we're dealing with as compared to our perception of what's appropriate. So that's one of the biggest, and I haven't figured out how to solve that problem. Really, they are genuinely comfortable with many things that we would not have been at that age or are now.
We have a generic technology etiquette breach. The dam has broken for this generation, and there's no reset button right now whatsoever. We're seeing at the corporate level for sure. In the business world, it's broken, and the incoming generation is even worse in this.
And the role models are just not there.
Do you have a question that breaks out sexting? Perhaps if a consideration for one of the questions could be exploring that's a subset of risky behavior at this point, and it's growing. From
I
what
think
you're
it would be inappropriate use of a device.
right, yeah, whatever, however you frame it,
Yeah,
I'm sure you can come up
social
with.
media piece, I think going back to Rosemary's comment about what was the e-cigarettes, yeah. I think that's another one that needs to be there. I think we need to tease out some of the other responses.
Yeah.
This is, I hope you don't mind.
This is great. No, this is great. I do have the breakdown on this question for grades 9 through 12, but the question is, have you ever had the talk with your parents about what's expected or not? So you would see more seniors saying yes, because they have a whole year over a junior, a whole year, 2 years over a sophomore. Almost 56% of Lyman Hall students said that they had the talk, and 51% of Sheehan. 60% of 12th graders, ironically 60% of sexually active teens use a condom, 40% do not. I don't know the correlation there, but I am saying, we do have a lot of sexually active teens that are not using condoms. 48% of 9th graders have had the talk with their parents. I could cross this question with those students that have actually been sexually active. I probably don't have enough freshmen, but it would be interesting to see. I have had sex, and I've had to talk with my parents.
You have that data of how many have had
Yeah,
in Wallingford?
yeah. There's a whole lot of questions we're not going over today.
That's a hundred questions.
But we
That
do
would be
have
very
a
interesting.
lot of sex questions.
Yes.
Because then that.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So,
Although I'm a cardiologist.
These are all questions that were asked.
we had a few new questions in 2015 on the school environment too. Do you have at least one teacher or adult in your school that you could turn to if you have a problem? And in a classroom of 30, 20 said yes. So mostly the older students. Remember, these freshmen have been here for 8 weeks, so it's not a shock. Those that said yes, good job, she and Lynn Hall. Because in 8 weeks, they found that there's someone to go to. 84%, this is more than parents. The question on asking parents if they have clear rules and consequences.
Yes.
More students feel their school has clear rules and
Just
consequences
pointing it
than
out,
their
people.
parents.
Just pointing it out. And I guarantee you, if we had the question about, did we have a sex talk, I guarantee you our data would be higher than yours.
So, I think that sends a good message to the students, and this is, I wouldn't look at this in a negative context, consequence. Just, are you aware of the rules and
I'm good with the
consequences?
negative.
I'm okay with it.
You're okay, that's
Most students say they want that structure in place.
Yes. Well,
They won't say it, but.
except our kids.
Yeah, to your face, they won't.
The last question, just out of curiosity, this one, if you took out the freshmen because of that 8 weeks, what does that potentially look like for sophomores, juniors, and seniors?
So freshmen, about 60% of freshmen
Okay.
said that they could turn to an adult at school.
That's really good.
Very nice.
76% of seniors.
Okay. So
And these are very new seniors, so they still have a whole another
Yeah, so you're
8 months to
You're seeing a good 10 or 9%.
Oh, yeah. It goes, it goes really high between 11th to 12th. There's a big jump.
That would make sense.
It takes a long time to develop that trust and rapport with a kid. Where
No, that's great, that's a compliment.
And it was pretty equal between the boys and the girls.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, that was curious too, because it's an interesting age.
And slightly higher at Sheehan, 69% versus 66. And we did ask this in 2015 on the state questionnaire. And Wallingford falls right in there. They're within range of the state data. But remember, if we ask this of Wallingford students the same time as the Connecticut students, this would only go up.
Yeah, because it's spring rather than
Right.
fall, we asked them.
Right, so these freshmen, these rates are gonna climb across the board.
The other thing would be interesting, just, and I don't, do you have the freshman rates for London Hall?
I do, but not with me.
Okay, because my guesstimate would be because of the ag science program, students coming brand new into the system, there might be some discrepancy to that data, which might actually cause that potential discrepancy between Shane and London Hall.
Right.
Because they're coming brand new with, they don't know
New to their
anybody.
peers and.
Yeah, they're unique to everyone. It's
That's,
brand new.
that's the anecdotal information that's really useful, that I would never have
Yeah.
for you, you know.
Going on the tour the first day with
Right.
them around the Ag Science Center, they're newbies, they know everything, and they're wide-eyed and ready to go, but they don't know anyone. And it's those new.
But they do end up being very close to the boy.
Oh, yeah,
And
oh,
same
absolutely,
time.
but it's just, it.
Right, in the beginning.
Yeah.
Almost 80% of Wallingford students said that they feel like they really do belong at their school. And remember, these have been freshmen for 8 weeks.
That's beautiful.
And in Moran carries straight into Sheehan, pretty much, right? The Bullock. And almost 9 out of every 10 students, even us freshmen in this mix, say that they have plans beyond high school, whether it's a 2-year degree, 4-year degree, military, vocational, something is on their radar. And that's higher than state average. State average, I want to say, is about 75 or 78%.
Okay, Melissa, you want to say anything?
No, I'm not, I didn't comment, I didn't say a word.
Just saying, Sal got the mic on the other one.
I'm not saying, I'm not saying a word.
We yielded the floor to you.
No, I think that's great, I think that's great.
What's the increase from
We don't want
Melissa
it,
to
yeah.
what Melissa's
Don't
here?
throw any roses in our direction.
Surprisingly, our 11th graders were the highest. It was a good solid 90% of 11th graders. 88% of 12th graders, higher in females, and slightly higher at Lyman Hall. 86 versus 89. I mean, it's, very slight, but.
The females, they
Their
tell me,
turnout,
they're always
87%
focused,
freshmen.
Go
the
away.
boys.
Yeah.
That's right. They know what they're doing.
So incoming freshmen already have a vision of something beyond high school.
How many were the freshmen? How many freshmen?
87.
Wow, that's high, again, it's only 8 weeks in. That is.
You'd like 8 weeks in there?
That's actually the last I.
Bring it to the house fair, it worked for you.
I know we have questions kind of around, but.
We appreciate you tolerating that.
Thank you.
Well, that was wonderful. Folks, we're going to open the floor to more specific questions other than the 500 we just asked. Celeste graciously accommodated during our presentation, so thank you, Celeste, as always, for.
I have the full report here, if anyone wants to take the full.
Folks, any specific questions? I mean, just that weren't offered here. And as Dr. Mundo said, the report is also available online at the school, at the district's website, under the Federal Wellness, Guidance Wellness.
I
Is
think it's
there-
under wellness, I know
We
Karen
have
put
that.
Multi-purposes, right, so if you just type in,
I just was like.
yes, thank you, if I needed any more reading.
I really would just like to, again, thank Celeste. Celeste has been part of this journey now, going on 6 years. Or, well, 1, 2, 3, 4 years?
We started chatting Probably as early as 2014, 2012.
Yeah, so
Right?
it's almost 5 years back.
Right.
So I just want to say thank you so much. It's been everything we asked. I mean, we're so fortunate as a district to have somebody who's been a partner, and Craig, who's not here tonight, again, supporting this through youth and social services has been a value-added aspect. So I can't thank you enough. I know every time I hear this presentation, you learn a little bit more, and it really makes you reflect more and more about what we need to do, and also celebrate.
Oh, it's good. Thank you again. Without any other questions on the, oh, yes.
I did have a, just a question. I think we touched a little bit on a rise in mental health issues among kids and adults, actually, really, and the treatment of them. But I'm just wondering, because I think when you look at the rise in mental health issues, it correlates with prescription drug abuse and depressive episodes and everything that we see here in this survey. And so you had talked a lot about, or you talked about revising the health curriculum and things like that, and what Wallingford will be doing or can be doing to help build resiliency in kids. I think that's probably the utmost important thing that we can do when they're young. And those of us that know about it can work on it at home, but the majority, I mean, who don't know about it, how that can get infiltrated into our health and wellness
So we're
curriculum.
going to be offering on the March, maybe. Okay, I feel like.
Because, I mean, outside of like parents, because I think that's oftentimes kids with mental illness issues have parents with similar issues.
Yeah.
And so outside of offering things outside of school, what we're doing in school, in our health classes, to support and build
So
resilience.
again, after this survey came out, we looked at it, and when I say we, Melissa and I, our community partners, health teachers, we really tried to digest this and figure out what we needed to focus on. And the number one issue across the board for everyone was mental health.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can remember presenting some of this information to the Board of Ed members, and one of the Board of Ed members said, are we doing everything we can to work on mental health? And the answer is no. We have a lot to do. We have a long way to go. But we know it's an issue, and yes, we're working towards that now. Coming up March 23rd, which is a Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m. in here. It's not on any of those flyers. We're going to be offering QPR training. QPR stands for Question, Persuade, and Refer. It's a world-renowned training that we're able to offer. It was offered last year to teachers, and now it's going to be actually all staff. And we really want to get as many parents in here as possible, or 40 parents, because that's the max from the training. So March 23rd, 6 to 7 p.m. And that's going to be in here, and that's one of the many things that we're working on to try and. It's one of the many things that we're doing to work on mental health. Some of the others, it is talked about in our health curriculum, and we're putting more emphasis on it. We had the survey go out that Dr. Menzo sent out on life fatigue, and that's going to give us some more information and data, and give us a better clue of what we're dealing with, and from that more will stem. We have a teacher at Lyman Hall, Kasim Outlaw, who is really into this, and every Monday he does Mindful Mondays, and it's meditation practices and relaxation, and I think that's a real asset that we need to tap into. There's even people outside, or members of Wallingford that are outside the school district that want to help out with this. Heather McDonald is the lead physical therapist for Meriden Public Schools. She's done multiple presentations at different schools here in Wallingford, And we're going to try and tap her to do even more for us. And she's open to that because it's an issue, it's a problem. And so I'm sure I forgot something.
The other thing at the elementary level, we're piloting Second Step at Parker Farms, which is a social emotional development social emotional curriculum. It's an offshoot of Responsive Classrooms. So we have responsive classroom at all 8 elementary schools. But the actual Second Step program has a mindfulness component to it, has an anxiety component where it talks about self-regulation, talks about different ways for students, and there's a parent portal. So it offers parents an opportunity to go on and get information if they choose. So that's been piloted school-wide at Parker Farms. We're looking to extend that. The 3-5 schools in particular are very, very interested in that. It seems to be developmentally very well suited for that 3-5 level. We also last year, and then this year have implemented advisory at the middle school. So advisory is going on, and they're putting in those lessons dealing with anxiety. I know Moran is very, very much involved now with the mindfulness for their staff and looking to integrate that for students next year. So again, I think that the layers are growing. We have a collaborative effort with Cheshire Public Schools and Ellington Public Schools. So we're looking at that life fatigue problem for all 3 constituent groups through the lens of those other districts also to see how we can come together collaboratively. Cheshire has put a significant emphasis on mindfulness. So they're trying to figure out whether or not that has had return on investment, since the data recently doesn't show significant changes in behavior from what I'm hearing. I mean, there are some changes, definitely, but I think they want to continue to grow in that area. They've done phenomenal work, so we want to work with them. Ellington is just beginning to kind of identify some of the concerns. So I think the key thing that we have going for us is, first of all, we have the data to support why we need to do it. And secondly, the Board of Education has supported the funding, be it through the DESA. We do now have social emotional screening happening at all of our elementary schools, which that is not a standard across the state, even though it probably should be because of SRBI having the 2 sides of the triangle. A lot of districts have not gone to the social emotional side of the triangle. So the board has consistently supported that, and actually that was a non-discussion this year. It was just like, okay, we have to continue that practice. So as I think Tony's point is well taken, though, that as much as we could say everything we're doing, there's just so much more to do. And I think your point is spot on about the parents of the students that we need to reach. And I think that's the challenge that I know Craig Turner, if he were here tonight, he would speak to, because we engage him and his staff frequently in our outreach to those families once we have the information, and we collaborate very closely. And also we utilize our medical advisor, Dr. Valentin, to really, really engage families more so than we ever have over the last 3 years. Because there are some physicians who may understand a school system and the workings, and others that might not. So he can talk to another physician differently than I can, or a principal, or a teacher, or a guidance counselor. So we've really leveraged his capacity, be it in face-to-face meetings, conference calls, whatever it may be, to get to some of these issues. We also, through our attendance committee that Melissa and several of our administrators coordinate, we really now have pulled in, as based on the state statute that's changing as of July 1st of 2018, we've pulled in other entities such as obviously the probation and the court system and DCF. So we also have that, so that services, because it's beyond just identifying the problem, it's making sure that we can provide the appropriate services. And sometimes the school has those services, sometimes we don't. And we all know 211 is not always available. So a lot of work.
I think I would even go a step further, instead of just identifying, but preventing things in the first place.
And you
And
know,
being more
Well, that's where
preventative.
second step comes in, starting, which again, that's a key thing. Second step, responsive classroom, the advisory, putting, those are all preventative measures.
this is my first year in Wallingford, and something I was really attracted to was the emphasis on mindset. My previous district, we read the book Mindset, and it was extremely powerful, and to see the buy-in here, I think that's a great place for parents to start, just reading that book and learning some of the techniques, because I think anybody who reads that would be able to see themselves in either the fixed mindset or the growth mindset, and you can really pull some positive strategies to help grow that perseverance and that resilience.
And you know what I forgot, I apologize, but we just talked about it as a celebrations fair at our administrative council meeting, was the board approved about $150,000 worth of funding this fall in BCBAs.
Yes.
So we have BCBAs working in all of our elementary schools.
I know a really good BCBA.
Well, we don't hire them directly.
No, she doesn't. No.
It's a sister.
Yeah, we don't hire them directly.
Nepotism.
But what we did was,
It's his sister, she's a BCBA in Malliard.
so in terms of through Connecticut Behavioral Health, we contracted, so we have a teacher at every grade level in every single elementary school, kindergarten through grade 5, getting trained and working one-on-one with a BCBA and working through the lens of an actual student in their classroom. And part of the requirement is that they have to not only develop their skills, obviously share their skills, but also engage the parents. So they're learning to have that 3-pronged approach. So they're working with the student, the parent, and the BCBA to kind of work together with the teacher to develop those skills, to cultivate them. So that is, again, I would say that's a significant preventative measure. And those are pre-referral students in most instances, to really kind of develop those nurturing skills, those cognitive skills for the teacher, those capacity skills. So that was a huge step, and the board didn't blink an eye. They said, we need it, go for it. So we're very fortunate, and we are, that's in next year's budget also, because we wanted, what we're doing is the teachers have made a 2-year commitment. So, because we don't want to just do it 1 year and then, have a turnover. So we want to have a 2-year commitment and then grow the cohort every 2 years. So those teachers are part of the EIP team, the early intervention planning team. So they take their newfound skills, they apply them and share them with the whole team at that grade level. So it's a phenomenal opportunity to have that going on, again, at all 8 elementary schools. So we have 24 teachers that'll have such an increased level of capacity by the end of this school year, and I can only imagine by the end of next school year. So that, I should have led with that one, so I apologize, but we had just done a celebration today about that, so.
I just have one question. There's a gaining activity question? What? Oh my goodness, is that real?
Yes, so the easy answer is no, it's not.
Okay.
Could you tell us what page that's on?
17.
The study was, if you see the increase among sophomores, I think they are there,
Yes.
the highest percentage.
Well,
So that sophomore,
Okay.
that sophomore group, when they were 8th graders in
was
DAG,
that the DAG group? That-
Yeah.
there is a group of young men
Yes.
who, in all honesty, are really nice kids.
You're welcome.
Periodically, they do some foolish things, but in school, they don't really cause many waves in the school. So do they have issues? Yes. Do we deal with them often? We do. But they're not what I would consider, or I think anyone that has actually dealt with a gang problem. But they are definitely identifiable
Yeah.
as a group of young men that gave themselves a title.
And Rosemary, Joe, myself, the police chief, we all met together based on that data point because we were a little concerned. We wanted to make sure that we saw it the same way he saw it, and he confirmed what we saw. And we figured if anybody knew.
No, it is. It's
you'd be
a
the one
large
who would.
percentage increase.
And it's not a typical, again, I don't want to be Pollyannish, but it's just not something that we really do. So Les, at this point, unless there's any other questions, no, this is wonderful. If you want to abstain from the rest of our discussion, you're fully excused. I appreciate your time and energy of dealing with the marathon session at Wallingford.
No problem.
But thank you so much, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're indebted to